as we celebrate 200 years of the first passenger railway, you can't escape those double arrows. They're gonna be everywhere, on every station, most signage, and even on the trains themselves. But where did this logo come from, and how did it help bring the railway together? On the 1st of January 1948, the UK saw the beginning of a government body for overseeing of railways and its associated stock. British Railways was designed to modernise, revolutionise and streamline the railway network so the average consumer, aka you and me, would benefit from this faster, reliable and cleaner service. Of course, reality was much different, and British Railways did not take into account its ageing fleet, the amount of maintenance needed on the lines to bring them up to par, and the fact people were beginning to move away from the rails and onto the roads. By 1954, it was forced to report its first losses and had to acknowledge its own short sight into the new modern techniques in getting about and lack of innovation. By the 1960s, it was clear that something drastic had to be done to turn the railway's fortunes around. The railway was investing heavily in diesel locomotives, but it'd be all for nothing if the engines had nought to pull. The British Transport Commission had a new chairman, and he was keen to get the railways back on track. And his name was Dr. Richard Beeching. He envisioned a total overhaul of the entire network and provisioned a notorious report called The Shaping of British Railways. A lot of you know what was said in that infamous report, and if you don't know, this report is the reason why many railway enthusiasts have opinions on him, including calling him the Axeman. But we're not here to talk about that. What we are looking at is another project Beeching oversaw. He wanted the railways to be a singular brand, one railway where everything was standardised and brought together. British Railways had started this many years before with standard designs of engines and coaching stock, but Beeching wanted to take this one step further. He worked closely with the British Rail Design Panel, whose goal was to create a singular image that every railway engine and every member of staff would adopt. Once the big four railways had been brought together into British Railways, all rolling stock was given a unified logo. The logo was nicknamed Unicycling Lion and was launched in 1949 and was a common sight. However, it was not long to last, as it was replaced with another logo barely 8 years later. In 1960, a young man called Jerry Barney applied for a lettering artist position in the Design Research Unit at the offices in London. His work was impressive and he worked through the ranks rather quickly. His work ethic caught the attention of one of the co-founders, Milner Gray, and took a shine to the young lad. The two formed a close bond, and soon they were working on Milner's designs together, something the other workers could only dream to aspire to. When the word from Beeching came down of his ideas, the designers at the unit got to work, but the designs at first didn't seem to fit. Milner knew they could do much better, so the design was opened up to any member of staff that worked there. One morning, as Jerry took the train to work, he was doodling. He jotted down ideas, but one stood out. 2 parallel lines with a horizontal zigzag connecting them. He drew it out more formally when he got to work. After a few weeks, over 50 designs for the new logo were put on the walls, and soon it was whittled down to 2. Thanks to the press leaking the other design, Jerry's design won out. The design was the cornerstone of a manual drawn up in 1965 called the Corporate Identity Manual. The manual covered 4 volumes. The first showcased the new logo and the new typeface for all railway signage called the Railway Alphabet. It might seem a small change, but it was a needed one. In the days where station masters would hand paint signs, some were difficult to read and looked disjointed. By using the same font throughout on every signpost, not only was it easy to read, but it was simple and cheap to produce. The second volume took the logo further and gave guidance on posters both regional and around the network. This was very specific and would guide people on the type of colours acceptable, called house colours, and the logo type that they could use. Everything was covered, from the large posters to the timetables you would put in your pocket. The third volume focused mostly on the stations themselves. Stations now had to adopt new running inboards and all signage had to bear the new logos. The volume also covered pictograms, for example toilet signs and refreshment rooms. It was the smaller changes, but it would help unify the stations onto one big brand. Finally, the largest change, the rolling stock. All rolling stock was unified by a specific colour palette and a new colour was created called rail blue. All engines were painted in this new colour with yellow fronts, as per the regulations at the time, with new coaches produced in a mix of blue and white. Any goods wagons were to be painted maroon. The final volume also included any window signage that would go in the carriages. While the new liveries were a gradual adoption, the logo was presented to great fanfare and it was reproduced all over the country. Interestingly, all the lines in the original logo are not the same thickness, and this led to some of the regional railways not quite getting the logo right. But the logo stood out and stood firm throughout the years. But when the railways were privatised in the 1990s, many expected this logo to go as well. But it didn't. Because the logo is so synonymous and recognisable with the railways, many stations and companies, the logo was now a registered trademark in the name of the Secretary of State for Transport, and those that use the logo now do it under licence. In 2022, a new publication was launched that made minor amendments to the logo. These amendments defined the symbol and redrew it to make it more unilateral, taking away the differing whips and removed the requirement for variants. Even though the logo was adopted nationwide, the regional railways had difficulty in getting it correct, so it varied from station to station, although the differences were tiny at best. The new 2022 design is to be used for the new Great British Railways and is slowly finding its way into stations. I noticed it last year on a few signs at York, and the logo was slowly encroaching. In a novel twist, the logo has actually been used in a way that the publication did not intend. The Rail Symbol 2 publication strictly prohibits the use of the logo with other graphic elements. However, when approached by Railway 200, Network Rail couldn't help bend this rule, and the barbed wire or the arrows, whichever way you call it, has become an intricate part of the celebration. It is now the symbol, and many railways up and down the country, heritage alike, are now adopting it. With the exception of London and its iconic roundel, if you are looking for the station, you only need to look for the symbol. It doesn't need to say anything else, we all know what it means. I personally feel it's only right for this logo, which has been with us for over a quarter of the time the public railways as we know them has been running, to be a part of the celebration. And this ain't a plug, I promise you, but many events over the next year has merch with this logo on. I couldn't resist the pin badge, and I may treat myself to the new teddy. Although the museum is bringing out the Mallard plushie soon, and it wouldn't be fair that Scotsman is here without its LNER roommate.